Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our live webinar. Today is Thursday, August 27th. I'm Richard Schoen, coming to you from our offices in Eden Prairie, Minnesota, where the state fair season is in full swing. I plan to go there myself next week. I'll be the moderator today for our webinar entitled How Electronic Forms Output Streamlines Business Processes, brought to you by Help Systems and RJS Software. This webinar will provide an introduction to some of the common reasons why companies may want to eliminate their pre-printed forms in favor of automated form output generation processes. I'm excited to have you all here today, so let's get started. As mentioned, I'm Richard Schoen. I'm Director of Document Management Technologies here at Help Systems. I'm part of the Technical Solutions Group at Help Systems, bringing topics like this to our customers and prospective customers. My background, I have over 27 years of history with IBM i, Windows, and Linux platforms, and managing and delivering forms and documents. So hopefully we'll find some of my input relevant today and educational. Our agenda today will hopefully provide a good introduction to Help Systems, RJS, and our electronic forms output solutions. We'll also provide a quick company overview on Help Systems, and then we'll talk about some of the common business reasons companies move to electronic forms output generation. We'll also provide an overview of our iForms electronic form generation software. Then we'll provide a short demo of the iForms software designer. Then we'll end with a few minutes of Q&A and polling questions. Feel free to enter your questions in the chat window as we go, and I'll address them towards the end of the webinar. Select all presenters so the questions get directed directly to me, and then we'll also plan to complete our session in 30 to 40 minutes, so you have plenty of time to get to your next important meeting. And we're picking up a little background from somebody who's not on mute. Thank you for that. Okay, a little background on Help Systems. We've been in the business for over 32 years, providing systems management, business intelligence, and reporting software and security solutions for IBM i, Windows, Linux, and AIX platforms. RJS document management products joined the product portfolio of Help Systems last year, so we've been part of the company just over a year, and we focus on helping companies implement paperless process to capture, manage, deliver, and secure their critical documents. Our WebDocs family of products helps companies go paperless by providing several key document management components. Quick overview of some of those components. So we have document management software for capturing and storing reporting, capturing and storing drawings, electronic documents, scanned information, and pretty much anything that you can generate as a PC file today. Also, we have business process tied into that. We've got workflow built in, signature capture, approval routing, and all of that sort of stuff to implement business process for document routing and approvals. And then we have our forms management components, which we'll focus on today. And just to provide a little clarification, we have two forms management solutions in terms of input capture and output generation. We had a little confusion on one of our last webinars, but we have components which we'll cover today on document output generation, generating electronic forms and that sort of document. But we also have software that can be used to capture forms from web-based forms. So imagine if you've got HR forms and those types of forms where we want to collect data and capture those, we've got software for doing that and then be able to generate business documents from those. But our focus today will be on output generation documents. Okay, so this is probably 99% of the customers that I talk to are coming and they've got a scenario where they're either using pre-printed forms today or they've got a product that's outdated and they want to make some changes. They might be using IBM Advanced Function Print. They might be using some simple overlays or things like that for doing their document generation. So a lot of times every business has a need to generate these types of forms. Many companies are still printing and mailing those sorts of forms. And a lot of times they have spool files if they're an IBM i customer, or maybe text files, or in today's world, a lot of customers want to generate, we get people that are doing multi-platform things where they're running applications on Windows and Linux and Unix, and they want to be able to use their database or XML files for input. Also, they want to be able to convert those documents typically and apply overlays or generate data-driven documents, as we talked about. Typical destinations for some of the documents you might generate would be you want to start printing them or emailing them, maybe faxing them. A lot less people are doing fax nowadays, but it's still out there. Also, you may want to archive and capture those documents electronically to SharePoint or a network folder or a document management solution such as our WebDocs software. So probably I'd say 99% of the people that I talk to on forums have this business need to automate some of the process that they're doing today. In a lot of cases, they still have mailroom personnel that are dedicated to folding and stuffing and printing documents and then sending them out. Probably the second largest common scenario that we run into is customers need to create customer letters and other sorts of correspondence, especially in today's world where you have to audit everything that's sent out, or there might be recall notices and things like that. Companies have to track that information, and a lot of times their letters are manually generated out of Word and printed, maybe then scanned back into a system. But being able to automatically generate letters, price books, other sorts of document correspondence for customers and employees and vendors automatically is a huge win for most companies when they need to generate the type of correspondence that we need. And typically, in a lot of cases, you can actually hook into your ERP systems and your business processes to be able to trigger those documents off as well. We've got some customers where, example would be in the insurance industry, need to generate a policy, and I want to hook up to one of my screens and just hit a function key to be able to generate a document rather than opening Word, typing out the document, filling it out, printing it, and then filing it or scanning it. So a lot of process improvements can be gained just by generating letters and other correspondence, as well as some of the business forms that we talked about. So from our perspective at Help Systems, the iForms product is our solution for doing electronic form and document design. So again, we can replace pre-printed forms with electronic forms output. So we can generate from IBMI spool files and PC text files, SQL databases, and XML data input files. So when I say SQL databases, it could be a DB2 database running on IBMI, could be a SQL Server, could be MySQL, Postgres, pretty much anything that has a database driver we can use as input for our documents. Customers typically want to output to PDF most of the time, but also in some cases for imaging, they want to output to TIFF or even data formats. Some customers want to be able to send out EDI documents or even pricing data and things like that. So iForms can generate Excel, CSV, and XML as its outputs as well. So you may not always want to generate a visual document, but you might want to send out data formats to other people. Also, we have a graphical form and text overlay designer. We'll be doing a little demo of that in just a few moments. And we also have document assembly built into iForms as well. So document assembly is really nice in the scenario where, let's say you have additional documents. Let's say you want to generate an invoice and send it out, and you want to send all the corresponding documents, such as signed proof of deliveries and things like that, in a single package. You can actually assemble multiple PDF documents into a single package and then either send it electronically or print it or archive it. So document assembly is something that's really popular. Another interesting use for that is marketing documentation. So let's say a customer order was shipping and you were generating shipment documentation. And I've talked to customers where they actually have people that are stuffing additional marketing information in envelopes when they send out their shipping information. So imagine being able to generate an order or an invoice and then be able to automatically print related marketing documentation to go in with the shipment documents. So you're doing marketing automatically from some of the output that you're generating. So taking someone out of the loop having to manually do that. Kind of a nice use for document assembly. As far as output, we can print with iForms to any type of printer. So whether it's a HP laser printer or a large multifunction copier printer, as long as it's got a Windows-based driver, we can print directly to any printer. And then we can also print through IBMI output queues if you happen to be running on IBMI. As far as monitoring documents with iForms, you can actually monitor output queues if you happen to be on IBMI. So we look for spool files coming into output queues, and we can automatically process those, send them out to printers, send them out for delivery. We can also process directories as well. So if you've got a scenario where you're generating text files or XML, instead of spool files, we can monitor IFS folders on the I. We can monitor Windows directories and actually pick up input from those and do the conversion. And then for customers that want to integrate to their own application code, they can use our IBMI CL commands. We've got a CL command for doing merging built into the IBMI. And then we also have a universal REST API. And for those of you that don't know what REST APIs are, it's the idea of really that you can use an HTTP call from any application to be able to generate a document. So we see that in our case. Our business here at Help Systems is typically about 80% IBMI still, but we get a lot of customers that are using non-IBMI systems, and they want to be able to actually use the iForms software to generate documents. So it's nice to be able to have all the different APIs available to them. And then we have a choice when you run the iForms server to run it on either IBMI or on a Windows platform server. So a lot of customers choose to run it in a virtual machine. They use VMware or maybe something like Hyper-V. So being able to run the Forms server on any platform is really nice in terms of setting it up. So here's a quick look at the iForms Document Designer. We'll look at this more in depth in just a moment, but here's a typical form design. And then with a spool file, if you happen to be using an IBMI spool file or a text file, we create a text overlay, and I'll show you a demonstration of that in just a moment. And then at runtime, typically what we're doing is we're bringing in a spool file, merging it with the form, and then you get your business quality document. So it can include barcodes, graphics, text, and then that information can actually be changed on the fly. I've talked to customers where, in some scenarios where they have, they'll do an invoice run and they have multiple companies, or they're generating documents for some of their business partners, and they want to be able to pull in logos, swap address information, and also maybe include images of product and things like that in their documents. So being able to do that dynamically is a nice feature of iForms. Quick architecture overview. So typically with iForms, if you're running with IBM i, we have a library that runs on IBM i. We have an optional Windows server, as I mentioned. And then probably I would say 90% of the customers that I've worked with in the past start by generating IBM i spool files. So they've got an application like JD Edwards or one of the Infor applications, maybe generating spool files, and then they'll generate them to an output queue, and then want to run our output queue monitor, which does all the merging and creation of form overlays. And then that will either output to another print queue, or it can print or send the documents out via email. So if you're using Exchange or Office 365, or you want to archive it or something like that, that can all be accommodated typically through the iForms output queue monitor process. And then we run into customers nowadays where, and I try to advocate this as much as possible when people are doing new process, but using data-driven documents. So as I mentioned, we support data input from pretty much any database. So in some scenarios, let's say you wanted to re-architect your invoice processing and not actually use spool files. We can actually read information. So maybe we go to the order header file and get a list of orders for today, pull in all the detail lines, pull in all the comments, pull in all that additional information, and then we can dynamically build documents on the fly from that data. So being able to utilize your database is a nice feature of iForms. And in some cases, we see where customers have a mixed scenario where they actually will use, let's say I've got a spool file that has data in it, and it doesn't have all the information that I need. Being able to draw information in from the database alongside of a spool file-driven document is really powerful as well, to be able to include data without having to update a spool file or a report if we want to just use that for forms output. So this example shows our IFM exec command being used. It runs against the IBM i or a Windows server, grabs data from the database, generates the document output, and then that output, again, can be pushed into an output queue if you need to, or printed to a Windows printer, emailed, archived, or distributed to SharePoint or something like that. So it's a great way to be able to generate documents from data, output them to the IFS, output them to a network directory, or distribute them. Quick overview on the iForms Assembly API. So the iForms Document Assembly API that we have, like I talked about, allows you to create complete document packets. You can generate a PDF document via iForms, or maybe you generate a PDF document from one of your spool files on IBM i. I think the copy spool file command now can actually generate PDF documents on IBM i. So those are candidates for being assembled as part of a document packet. So in a lot of cases, you might have an order coming out of your ERP system that triggers a process, and then you want to insert some static PDF files, maybe some work instructions or other documentation, marketing documents like we talked about, being able to insert all of that together and then be able to either print that or assemble it and then distribute it as well is a nice feature of the Document Assembly API. And on the IBM i, it's simply a CL command that you can call out from some of your processes. A lot of times we run into customers where they're coming from another existing, either an IBM i or a Windows-based form solution, and they want to be able to do a jump start. So rather than redesign their entire document, a lot of times what can happen is if the customer provides us with a Word document or with an Excel or a existing PDF document that they have, we can turn that into a simple form overlay and then just map database fields out onto the form. So it's a great way. A lot of times I think the biggest investment people put into if they're migrating to a new form solution is spending the time to re-architect their documents, and a lot of times that's an inhibitor when you move to a new solution. So we have the way, like I mentioned, the ability to actually just take an existing form, create an overlay from that, and then map data fields onto it, map images onto it, or logos or barcodes or any of that sort of stuff. So it's a great way to get a quick win when you're converting from another form system and moving into the iForms software. All right, so enough intro. Let's take a quick look at the iForms Designer. I'm going to show you a quick spool file-driven document, and it looks like my server locked me out. Let's see if we can get it to unlock me. There we go. So in this case, what happens is when you typically, if you're an IBM i customer and you have a spool file, so it's basically a text report out on an IBM i output queue. So in my case, I have my system here, I have my output queue, and then refresh my report list, and you'll see it came up with my list of reports here. So I can actually go in and just pick a spool file, and it brings it up in our iForms text designer. So in a sense, think of every page in a document as a record in a database, because what we ultimately do is we're going to draw fields around each of the areas that we want to include from the spool file. And I'm just going to call up an existing one that I've done for an invoice, and you'll see we've got all the different areas marked out. So like there was a box drawn around this area, you'll see it's been named as ship to. This one has been named as bill to. We have a date, we have an invoice, and then we have columns. So in this particular report, I could have drawn a box around all of the column data, but I want to be able to potentially reorder it on the form, or maybe put it in a different sequence. So by drawing data around each of the columns where I've got information like part number and quantity and totals, I can actually move those around on the visual document when we get into designing that. So step one of designing a form usually is creating this text overlay, or extractor template as we call it, for grabbing data from the spool file. And then we apply for each page, we end up creating a database that has all these fields in it. So in a sense, we're mapping a spool file to a database, and then we treat each page like a record. And then so over here in our designer, so once we've done that, what happens is you'll notice we had bill to and ship to and all of our field names. You'll see they get designed in our form designer as text field boxes, and then we actually just go in and set the properties for it, or you can select it as well, but you put the field name for that field in the text extractor right into here, and we map that field at runtime right onto the form overlay. So a couple of different types of elements that we can include in a form. So we've got lines, we've got rectangles and boxes and ellipses. That's the black area of this form is used. Those are ellipses with rounded corners. You can do static text. You can do fields, which is what these guys are, where we're mapping field names. You can also do image files, where in our case we have our RJS logo, and then you can do barcodes as well. So just an example of throwing a barcode on there, you can actually look in here, and you'll see we've got same thing as if you're mapping a text field. We can grab a field from the data that came in from the spool file or from a database and actually map it to several different barcode types, and including QR codes, I believe, as well. And then we have images. So if let's say we wanted to swap this logo on the fly. I actually have it hard-coded as an image file, so you can see the actual file name in here. So, but this could actually be a data field as well. So I've seen customers where they'll actually put the field name inside of the spool file, or we can use a company number or something like that to actually be able to draw in an image based on a database location. And so these images can typically be stored either on the IFS on the IBMI or out on the network folder as well. So a lot of different ways to be flexible in terms of being able to change the look and feel of these documents at runtime. Same thing if you were doing address information and you wanted to swap that, rather than pulling it from a static field like we are here, we might drive that from a database field. So you can make your dynamic documents where they can swap logos and other information on the fly. If you've got different companies or different divisions being in a single spool file run or a single document run, it's a great way to be able to consolidate those and have one form template for all those companies. I talked to somebody yesterday that they have 9 companies, and today they actually generate 9 different templates in the software that they use to be able to do their invoices. So being able to consolidate down to one template and just have it swap in and out information as it's needed is a great way to consolidate those forms and also to streamline that process for the forms as well. All right, so let's run this guy so you can actually see what some of the data looks like. So one of the nice features in iForms is we can actually run live against your data when you're testing. So I talked to someone the other day where they were using, I think it was the IBM InfoPrint Designer, or no, they were doing overlays, I believe. But one of the scenarios they were doing is they had to generate an overlay, create it, update a program, then print it out, and then look at it, and they would repeat that sequence over and over again when they were doing their analysis of, is my form designed correctly? In our case, what you can do is anytime you make a change in the form designer, it's just a matter of I make my change, and then if I want to see what it looks like, we'll make that invoice too and see what it looks like. I can just run those in real time and actually get instant feedback when I'm designing the form. So it's a great way to be able to interactively design and test your forms and get the output right before it goes out into production. And as you'll notice, we generate a PDF document even when you're testing, so you can see exactly what it's going to look like in its final format, since 99% of the time you're probably going to generate to a PDF, and then what we do is automatically print those PDF documents for you. So this really becomes your final output and a good modeling tool as well when you're developing your form templates. All right, so I think that for my quick demo, that kind of concludes what we were going to go over. If anyone has some questions, let's go ahead and enter those in the Q&A window. And then I'm also going to show a little bit of a poll here with a couple questions on it too. So if you folks don't mind answering that, I'll take about 2 minutes and we can fill that out. I'd be curious to see what sort of feedback we have, and I'll share it with the group in terms of what people are looking to do with their electronic forms output. And while we're waiting for the polling time to complete, I've got a couple of questions that I received that I can start to address as well. So, and please feel free to enter any more in the chat window or in the Q&A window. So one question I had, and I think I addressed this at the beginning, but how would I generate documents from databases other than DB2? So in our designer, basically, if you're doing a database-driven document, you can actually select the driver that you're using. So if you're using IBM DB2, it's usually the JT400 driver that we use. If it's SQL Server or MySQL, it's the appropriate driver as well. So as long as there's a database driver available for the appropriate database you want to use, iForms can take advantage and utilize that driver. So pretty much any data source, including CSV files too. We have some customers where they generate CSV output from a mail merger database or something like that, and they want to simply generate documents from those CSV files. So it's a nice way to be able to generate pretty much any sort of data source that you want to utilize to run and generate your forms. And then I've done some integration where I've tied it into one of the products that Help Systems has, is a product called Automate, but being able to read data from CSV files and call using our REST API from a Windows application to be able to automate merging of documents. So there's some cool things that you can do with that. Good question. Also, how do I call the document generation process from PHP or .NET? And this probably more more general question that fits any platform. So it could be a Ruby application, could be a Java application. We don't really care. But so a REST API was sort of designed to be used from any application. So almost like they used to call, web services were the universal translator. They can talk in any language. A REST API simplifies that, and I've been using REST before it was called REST, where we actually simply build out a URL to be able to call a document merge and then have it return a PDF document. So really, we don't care what platform or what language that you're coming from if you're using our REST API. We simply build out an HTTP URL. Now, if you're merging on IBM I natively, of course, you can use our CL command or our output queue monitor as well. So those are actually good ways to do application generation of documents. Another good question. The other one says, if all my data, and I think I mentioned this one as well, but if all my data isn't in the spool file, can I get data from my database and use it in the form? And yep, so if you design your form template, so as I mentioned earlier, we actually use each spool file, we treat each spool file, a page, as a record in a database. So by virtue of that, we extract the data at runtime from that spool file page, and if we need to bring in additional data, there's actually an SQL query component in there where you can actually draw in, okay, I've got my spool file page, now I want to actually join in data from my ERP database. So the customer master, the order master, or the detail, the order comments, all that additional data can be brought in directly from your database. So it's pretty, and I think we're one of the only vendors that I know of that can actually do spool file driven documents and draw in data at the same time when you generate your form documents. So it's a great way to be able to utilize existing spool files plus information from your database when you're generating documents. Okay, so here's another one. Actually, this is interesting. I would like to generate a document that is fillable, one that won't draw on an existing database file or file, but one I can publish to our website for applicants to complete. Do you offer anything like that? Well, actually, as I mentioned at the beginning, that actually fits more of the data capture component of our web forms product. Remember, we talked about this is, we're covering forms output, but a good question, because that addresses really, in your case, you want to be able to capture online data. So we have a component called web forms where you can absolutely set up an online form, users can enter data, and then we can generate a fillable PDF, or actually complete the fillable PDF. So let's say an example of that would be if you've got HR forms that you fill out, or other forms where there's a government template already built by someone, what's nice is we can set it up where you capture the data from a web browser, and then we can fill that document and then either distribute it or archive it or print it. So where I've seen use of that a lot of times is in HR, where they need to generate W-4 and I-9 documents or anything else that might already be out there. So you can generate your own fillable PDF documents, or in a lot of cases, if there's a government form or a form online that someone else has put out there that's fillable, we can utilize that and fill those as well. But that's more part of our web form solution. But we'd be happy to get with you after this and talk more about that. And we do actually have there's a replay on our website, and we've got one coming up in September where we'll cover our streamlining document capture by removing the paper, and that'll cover all the input document types that you need to do. And there we do an example of a fillable PDF. So good question. Let's see, I think our poll has expired, so let's see, so does your company, I have to expand it here. Let's see, oh, poll results, there we go. Hopefully you guys can see the poll results, but I'll read them anyways. So does your company utilize electronic form generation? I would say we got 30% said yes. 30% said, or 66% said yes, 33% said no. So there's always people that are still looking to automate process and aren't doing it so far. We have about 20% that does customer orders that they want to generate. We have customer letters and correspondence, which fits with our two core scenarios. And then some said other as well. So there's probably other documents that fall outside of that, like HR or other sort of document forms that you might want to do. And then we're kind of split half and half between, we've got people that want to archive to email, some that want to archive network folders, a little bit to SharePoint. One of the things, just to comment on network folder archiving, a lot of times that's where a company may not have document management in place yet. So it's kind of a nice way to be able to capture documents and then, let's say, name them on the order number or the shipment number or something like that. But what happens is a lot of times is as you go forward, you'll find that gets to be a little more complex because you might have a document that comes out with the same order number, or a document that comes out with the same invoice number or something like that. So as you go forward, you might find issues of file naming collisions and that, so you want to make sure that you actually come up with unique file names when you generate output files, or that's the case for, since I'm a good salesperson, I have to talk about document management. Of course, a lot of people like to grab documents out of their network folders, pull them into the document management software, and then not only can we index by order number, but we can index by company name or customer name or amount, all kinds of different things that we can actually index documents based on. So an interesting side note on network folders. Here's another one. We currently use the Salesforce platform as our main system and database. What are the possibilities of having document management integration tied into the Salesforce platform? So from our perspective, we've got integrations where we can tie into Salesforce and use their web service calls. So, you know, as far as all the APIs that they've exposed, as long as Salesforce has exposed it, we can actually draw data from there and generate documents. We can draw information and documents from there, and we can pretty much participate as a full partner in the Salesforce integration. Our Automate product has some capability as well as our document management software to be able to do integration into the Salesforce platform. That's a good one because we see a lot of people using the Salesforce CRM platform. Can a form in web forms capture a signature? That's a good one. Yeah, so sort of back to, actually I'll address it from both, since we're talking about output management today, I'll address it in both scenarios. We have some customers that actually use our web form software to capture signatures, and then they take those signatures and place them on an iForms document that they generate. So it might capture a document in the field for a proof of delivery, and then you might actually want to print it on an iForm when it gets generated on the output side. So we do those sorts of things, but absolutely on the web form side, that goes back to the data input or the data capture side. We support capturing signatures on the web forms, and then they get stored with the form, or they can be used for output generation, or in some cases people want to grab a copy of that signature and store it somewhere as well. But we typically store it as part of the web form, and then we can merge it to other fillable documents, or we can merge it to iForms documents as well. So excellent question. Let's see. There's a question on, we used to sell a product called FormDocs for doing form merging. I'll take that question offline most likely, but typically when you're converting, much like you're converting from any system, so if you go from a FormDocs or if you're an Optio customer or an IBMI customer, if you're converting from one form system to another, there's always going to be nuances. So that's something I'll contact you offline and we can talk about that. And then, oh, okay. I was just seeing if we had any other questions. I see a couple other comments coming in. And I've got a couple people who asked for follow-ups privately, so we won't address those here. But hopefully you guys found this interesting and are thinking about some of the things you can do to put together your electronic form processes. I appreciate you guys joining us for our webinar today. It's always good to have attendees. Hope you found this useful and a good introduction to our electronic forms. If you have any questions about today's presentation, please feel free to reach out to me or our sales team or Greg Schmidt, my counterpart, who couldn't make it with us today. And I appreciate your time, and I hope you have a great day and enjoy the rest of your week.